whisper in the woods. Rory had been counting down to Friday all week. School had been a blur of lectures, homework, and the small grinding indignities of bus rides. The weekend promised the one thing that mattered: the falls. He, Kevin, and Malcolm had split the chores like veterans of many half-planned expeditions. Kevin would haul the battered tents from his father's garage. Rory would carry the fishing gear, and Malcolm would be in charge of provisions: a crinkling assortment of Doritos and Funyuns, a handful of sodas, and a stash of Little Debbie cakes. Rory tucked something else into his backpack, something meant to glow with thoughtfulness. His mother loved flowers, papered with ink gestures that said, "I was thinking of you." He slid 3 Ziploc bags into the pack so each of them could gather a bouquet to bring home. A small proof of responsibility meant to earn them another weekend without adult chaperones. The trail narrowed, and the trees leaned in like congregants. A figure appeared at the bend ahead, pale as if the sun had passed through them, trembling with a nervous jerking motion. Their face caught the late light and looked almost candle-thin, eyes darting back toward the boys every few steps. They didn't speak. Their breaths seemed to carry a small, urgent panic. Rory's chest tightened, though Kevin and Malcolm were tightening the straps and adjusting packs with comfortable indifference of people who had been friends too long to notice something out of step. The figure melted into the underbrush and left only a thin ripple of unease in its wake. The forest took them in, roots braided across the path, slick with old rain. Sunlight broke through the canopy in irregular knives that cut the ground into bright and shadow. They fell into the kind of easy banter that lets a long walk feel short. Plans for fishing spots, debates over who would do the dishes at night. Rory's hands found the Ziploc bags in his backpack, again and again grateful for the weight of a simple, harmless purpose. By afternoon, the trail opened beside a stream that moved like liquid glass. Bell-shaped flowers nodded on the moss as if in agreement with the breeze. Their petals were a pale, intoxicating yellow that drank the light. Rory redistributed the bags.
"Pick the best ones for your moms,"
he said, voice light. The boys dropped to their knees, fingers brushing sticky stems, sap snagged on their skin like tiny, tenacious bees. Kevin scraped his knee on a rogue root, reaching to catch a boot. Malcolm nicked himself on a thorn. The cuts were small and ordinary, the kind you forget by the time you pack up. Something about the flowers made the air thicken. It was subtle at first. Rory felt it behind the eyes, a prickle of curiosity and a soft, almost pleasurable heaviness that settled along his limbs. He blamed the sun. The boys continued. The lake ahead tends to pitch, a fire to coax. As the day leaned into evening, they arrived at the lake shore. Kevin claimed the automatic tent with a possessive grin, while Rory and Malcolm wrestled with poles like reluctant engineers. Rory noticed small oddities with his friends now that the light had gone soft. The way Kevin's smile lingered fractionally too long. The way Malcolm moved with a deliberateness that made each motion seem practiced. He rubbed his palms, felt the tacky sap from the flowers, and tried to name a feeling that was slipping toward apprehension. Night folded itself over the camp. They worked by flashlight. The fire sputtered, and a wind threaded across the water with a voice like an old hinge. Then the whispering began. At first a thread of sound, below hearing, somewhere between the trees and the back of Rory's mind.
"Hurry. Come here."
It was coaxing, intimate in the way only a familiar voice can be. He glanced at Kevin, busy with the cord, and Malcolm, stacking wood, but they didn't look up. The voice came again, now layered, as if several versions of the same person were speaking out of time.
Rory.
Stay.
Rory.
Follow.
A faint whistle threaded the whispers, a half-remembered morning tune Kevin whistled on the bus. Benton flayed. Mist crawled in along the lake, tendrils curling around trunks and the boys' boots. The forest pressed close, and the conversation around the fire narrowed to the shallow pool light. When Kevin left to find more wood, his gait changed. It stiffened and became jerky, like a marionette loosened at one knot. Malcolm circled the campsite with a watchfulness that read as calculated. Their eyes, when Rory saw them, had shadow pooled at the edges. Laughter sounded wrong, hollow echoes that hit the ribs in the wrong place. The sap on Rory's cuts warmed and burned, as if the plant remembered where it had been touched. The second whistle came, and it was Kevin's tune again, but warped, as if played on a broken music box. Malcolm's voice, familiar syllables, filtered through the trees, but it bent and thinned at the edges. Rory felt himself pulled by the syllables the way a tide pulls at a boat on a slack tide, small at first, then irresistible. His own voice joined the chorus, estranged and metallic, the midst of close ranks. When they moved, they did not move as they had earlier. Kevin lunged with a grin that tore his face into something unnatural, his teeth elongated into sharp, narrow blades that caught the campfire like steel. His eyes were not eyes, but dark bowls that drank the light. Malcolm twisted with disjointed agility, joints popping into angles they shouldn't, and his limbs corded like ropes. The whispers multiplied into an angry chorus of imitations. Kevin, Malcolm, Rory, overlapping until identity was a smear. Rory ran. The forest no longer followed Max. Paths braided back to themselves, trunks rearranged, like the panels of a stage set. Roots tried to hook his feet. He tumbled down a bank, mud sucking at his shirt, and the Ziploc bag burst open across the wet leaves. The flowers scattered, their petals slick with sap that soaked into his skin and stung like the salt of small betrayals. Their fragrance filled the clearing, honeyed and cloying, and each inhalation made the whispers swell louder. He watched them, his friends turned into predators by degrees, faces becoming masks, bodies stretched and folded into grotesque parodies of human emotion. Their voices, once comfort, were now lure and command. The sap had been a line cast into them, and whatever lived in the petals had slithered up and seeded hunger. Rory scrambled into a moonlit clearing, the flowers thrown around like trembling congregation. Kevin and Malcolm closed in, limbs too long, grins too wide, eyes reflecting nothing but black. The screams that built in his throat were swallowed by the keen, desperate air. Then everything went black. He awoke to antiseptic and fluorescent light. Hospital quiet pressed against his ears, monitors tapping a sober, mechanical heartbeat. His parents sat on either side of the bed, faces drawn with relief and exhaustion. The Ziploc bag lay on the bedside table, the petals inside dim and fragile under the clinical sheen.
Rory.
His mother said, voice small as if saying anything louder might break something newly mended.
They're Angel's trumpet. It's poisonous. The sap can enter the bloodstream through your cuts.
His father's hand was warm and steady on his shoulder.
It can cause hallucinations, delirium. It's potent. You were lucky. Your cuts were small, but the toxins did its work.
Rory looked at the pale blooms, their edges curled as if ashamed. The hospital hum receded and the images of the dark-eyed figures slid into place like pieces of a puzzle. The whispering, the warped whistles, the way Kevin's smile had become a blade. The terror had been real, the chase had been real, but so had the science that explained it. Poison, reaction, the body tricked into seeing monsters,
You're safe now.
his mother had said. But even as she spoke, a thin, hesitant echo ghosted the room. Not a sound from the speakers, but a memory at the back of his skull. A whisper, patient and intimate, saying his name in a voice that could have only been any of theirs. Rory swallowed. The forest lay behind him like a page he could no longer read without turning cold. He kept looking at his hands, at little marks on his skin where sap had been and where terror had begun, and felt the hollow where something had tried and been stopped from taking him entirely. And that's when Rory heard the familiar whistle out the window of the hospital room. The ritual calls to you. Like and subscribe for more harrowing tales, or we will find you.